Now that you've built your dog's value for food through hand feeding, we can move into the next phase, which is going to be markers and engagement training. Markers are very important during the training process. It's essentially the first line of communication that we create with our dogs to let them know when they are doing something correctly or they are doing it incorrectly. Our first marker is going to be a terminal marker. We use the word yes. This seems to be the standard across the industry. Every dog trainer I know, every pet owner I know that uses markers, they use yes as their terminal marker. Now, the terminal marker you can look at as a positive marker. This is what we tell the dog when they have done something correct. Come to me to get paid. You are guaranteed to get a treat after hearing the word yes. Yes is a promise. This is how we are going to build extreme value and elicit an actual emotional response from the dog when they hear the word. Next is the duration marker. We use this word to let the dog know that you aren't done, but you're doing it the right way. Keep doing what you're doing. If I do pay you, I will come to you to give you the reward. You stay in place or keep doing the behavior that you are currently doing. Last but not least is the negative marker. This is what we use when we want to tell our dog that that was incorrect, try it again, or a correction is inbound, or we are going to withhold food. The word we use for this marker is no. Now, in the beginning of your training process, your dog is not going to have any value for these markers. It's up to us as their trainer to build the value, and we do this through conditioning. Conditioning is going to take one stimuli, the terminal marker, and pair it with a second stimuli, which would be food reward. These are separated by about a half a second, so it's going to look like say and then pay. Visually, that will be yes, then you reach into your treat pouch and pay. Yes, reach, pay. They're clearly separated by about a half a second, so that way we can clearly show our dogs that yes is being paired with payment, or clicker is being paired with payment. This is very important. If we do not have that half second in between the two stimuli, the dog will not make the clear connection that the terminal marker is leading to the food. So if we do it the wrong way, such as yes, the two stimuli going at the same exact time, the dog is really only going to be focused on receiving that food reward. They aren't going to really register what they're hearing at that moment. We need them to hear it and then receive it. Say and then pay. That's how you make the clear connection that this stimuli leads to that stimuli. That is how we build value for our markers. You may have heard of Pavlov's dogs. This was an experiment way back when they would ring a bell and then they would blow a meat powder into dogs' faces. The meat powder would get the dog to begin salivating. So over time, after hearing the bell and then followed by the meat powder being blown in their face, this would create the same effect from the meat powder for the bell. So all they would have to hear is that bell and the dog would immediately start salivating. That is how you condition two different stimuli and pair them together to create the same response. And that is exactly what we are doing with our marker words. Our marker word comes first and then it is followed by a treat. This is how we are going to build immense value for our marker words. We are going to introduce markers during engagement training. This is how we are going to condition our dog to have an emotional response and have real value within these marker words. Now, what exactly is engagement training? Engagement training is exactly that. Teaching our dog to remain engaged with us and kind of push us to drive the session forward. We want them to want to work, and engagement builds this. So when it comes to engagement, we are going to pay our dogs for simply remaining engaged or staying focused on us. We are not paying for sits. We are not paying for downs. We are not doing any of that. All we're doing is letting the dog know that as long as they remain engaged, they will continue to receive treats. Now, you may have noticed the main difference between the terminal and the duration marker, yes and good. Yes, the dog breaks their position and comes to me to get a treat, okay? Duration, good. The dog needs to stay in place. If I give the dog a treat, I will go over to the dog and give them a treat, okay? We are going to condition them to understand the difference between these two markers through engagement training, and we're going to contrast it through movement. So, with your dog engaged with you right in front of you, you'll mark with good. Then you will reach into your treat pouch and pay your dog. The duration is more of a low energy payment. The dog is getting easy rewards. He's just staying in place. We contrast the terminal marker from this with movement. So when we use the terminal, yes, then you reach in your pouch, step back, and pay. This will pull the dog from position and get them to come with you. This is how over time, through repetitions after repetitions and way more repetitions, our dog will understand that when they hear yes, I'm going right over to mom or dad and getting that treat. As for good, the duration, the dog has heard it so many times with them remaining in place, they are not going to have that conditioned response to break position and come over to you. So with all that being said, let's just run through a simulation of what that would look like all together. Good. Good. Yes. It's that simple. I'm going to go grab our dog, Creed, put him on leash so you can see it with a live dog for a live example. Conditioning markers during engagement training is going to take out two birds with one stone, influencing focus on handler, but also conditioning the words for the markers and really giving them a high value to the dog. Creed is a dog that resides in a nearby shelter that we took in to increase his chance of adoption by putting him through our training program. Good boy, Bubs. You can see he's already pretty interested because I have his food and he knows it. Good. So you can see he's pretty focused. Good. And I like him to look at my eyes. He looks at my hands because this is the delivery system. He looks at the bag because this is the source of food. But I want him to look at my face. Good. So I just took that little step to get him to re-engage. He heard the door open up behind the wall, behind the camera as well. So I just took a little bit of a step to help him re-engage, just like that. Good. Yes. At the beginning of this engagement process, we are going to mark and pay often. This is because our dog does not understand the task, and we need to lower that criteria and understand that when they look at us, we need to encourage that. So we need to do it often at first. Over time, we'll increase the criteria and increase the length of time that he needs to stare at me for me to mark and pay. Good. Yes. Good. So at this point, we do it every few seconds. Good. I would say Creed is better than the average dog I work with when it comes to engagement. So I can increase the time in between markers at a quicker rate than most dogs I work with. Yes. Good job, pal. Good. We'll increase the time. Good. He just maintained eye contact for a while there. I'm going to bring him over there so you can get a better idea of where his eyes are looking. Good. See how I just marked him looking at my eyes? He was looking at my hands, then he looked at the treat pouch, and then he looked in my eyes, and I marked that moment. Oh, what are we doing? What are we doing? Good. As you guys get better at this whole process, you can make the terminal marker much more fun. Good. Yes. Oh yeah. Dogs like to chase the treat. It makes the reward more fun, more memorable. So as you get better at this, you can make your training more of a game when it comes to the payments. Yep. He hears the dog out there. Good. And I can take those little steps without markers to re-engage him. Like I said, I'm not giving the terminal before I take these random steps to re-engage. Good. I just use them to recapture his attention. You may not be able to hear them on the camera, but we have a lot of dogs walking back and forth behind where the camera is set up, and that's very distracting to him. Good. So right there, I marked him choosing to re-engage and come towards me. The reason it's okay to use the duration marker is because his action was coming towards me. So I am marking that and telling him to continue that behavior. Good. Yes. Good job, Bubs. Good job. Now, as you can see, Shiloh maintains focus for a long time. Your dog will not be able to do this in the beginning of training. That's very normal. They just haven't built the skill like she has. We've been doing this for a long time. But at the beginning, we had to start much smaller, so her attention would wane much earlier on. I might have her attention for 1 second before she looks away. Now, I have it for probably a solid 1 or 2 minutes here and there, as long as the environment's not too intense. Good. So I take these long gaps in between the markers and payments. But when we first started, and this is the level you'll be at when you do this, it was much smaller gaps in between payment. It looked more like this. Good. Good. All I'm doing is giving her enough time to finish the chew, swallow it, and then look at me. Good. As they get better, your criteria goes up. The standard of how long they have to look at you goes up. So it might go from 1 second to 2 or 3. Good. Good. So on and so forth. Maybe up to 5 seconds. Good. Sometimes you can make a little sound to get their attention, break them, whatever, break their attention away from what it was, whatever you got to do, as long as it's not too intense. Don't repeat their name. Don't use their name during engagement training, because every single time you say their name without them looking at you and getting paid for it, well, that just becomes more white noise. Their name becomes another word that doesn't really hold much value. So during engagement training, if you do need to make a sound to get their attention, okay. But don't use their name. Try not to use any words at all except for G and Y. Good. Good job. Free. One of the cool things about engagement training is that it shows our dogs that there is immense value in engaging with us and staying engaged with us. What we can do to really capitalize on this is put engagement, the actual act of our dogs engaging with us, on a cue. I use the phrase, ready to work. When my dogs hear the cue, ready to work, they understand that the window of opportunity to earn food is open and they are going to capitalize on it, so they engage with me. This cue gives me the ability to draw their attention inwards towards me, away from their environment when their environment happens to be a little bit too intense with distractions for their level of training. An example of this would be if I'm at the park with my dogs and there's a bunch of squirrels running up and down the trees, there's a few dogs playing frisbee over in that corner. That's a very intense environment full of distractions for my dog. If my dog's engagement skill is very robust and we've spent a lot of time practicing and building it, Well, at that point, I can use the engagement cue, ready to work, to draw their attention away from all those distractors and back towards me. This gives me an opportunity to start working with my dog and regain control of the situation. Now, I can also give you an example of the engagement cue. Ready to work? After years of doing this together, that has built value. When she hears that, she snaps into engagement. That's how it can benefit you in the future. Some notes when it comes to engagement sessions. If you notice that your dog is becoming too focused on your treat pouch, it'll be easier if you have a treat pouch that you can either slide around your hips to the back, or if it's one of these over the shoulders, you can just put it right behind you, okay? This will help the dog remain focused on you rather than the gear that's right in front of their face, okay? If they're looking at your hands a lot, that's okay. Just keep them next to your side and wait for them to look at your eyes. If your dog is showing like 30 seconds of just staring at your hands and super fixated on them, go ahead and put him behind you. And as soon as he gives you the opportunity to mark when he looks at your eyes, take advantage of it. Additionally, it's a very good idea to practice this without your dog first. And that means the entire process. Good, reach into your treat pouch, bring it out. Okay, put the treat back. Yes, reach into your treat pouch, pull it out, present, put it back. Okay, this is much more difficult than it looks for people who have not tried it yet. It's a new skill that you need to practice, and you should give yourself some time to learn it before putting a dog at the end of the leash. If you make this really confusing and we're not doing the timing right, if we're saying good or yes at the exact same time as we're moving, it's not going to give a clear picture to the dog. They're not going to make that connection for the conditioning between the food and the marker words. So everything you can do to practice before you put your dog on the leash will benefit you immensely. Practice reaching into your pouch from the front. Practice from the rear. Eventually, as you get better at this, there's nothing wrong with having some food in your hand, okay? That way you can switch payment hands as well. Have some food in your hands ready to go. Good. Pay. Yes. Pay. The more you practice without your dog on leash, the better your dog is going to understand when he actually is in front of you. Your movements are going to be crisper, cleaner, and more easy for him to pick up and understand. So at what point will you know that conditioning the marker words has actually worked and your dog understands what they mean? They say it takes anywhere from 80 to 100 repetitions for a dog to figure something out and make the connection, but I have no idea how truly accurate that is. So I do not like to base my dog's progression off of that type of number. I like to test it out for myself. As they're walking around doing something neutral, not really paying attention to you, maybe just sniffing the ground or exploring the house, laying there calm, go ahead and say your terminal marker. Yes. If your dog snaps their attention to you, you can bet that your marker word means something to them. Yes. That shows when she hears her terminal, she knows she's going to get paid. When you test your marker word to see if it's actually effective, make sure your dog is not doing an undesirable behavior while you give the marker word, because the marker word encourages behavior to continue in the future. So if your dog is sitting there licking a hot spot on his foot, or he's chewing on your shoes, do not use the terminal marker in that moment to test to see if it works. Test the marker with a neutral behavior that you do not mind the dog performing again in the future. This is Shiloh. She's one of my personal dogs. She's pretty advanced in her training, so I'm going to use her to demonstrate how markers are used throughout training to create behaviors. So earlier on, we use a lot of luring. That's just where they follow the hand along with a treat in it, and that's how we manipulate them into certain positions. So if I'm trying to teach a dog a sit, she's probably going to lure immediately into it, so it's going to be kind of fast-paced. Yes. So as she was following the treat up over her head, her butt was coming down, and as soon as it touched the ground, that exact moment I marked with the terminal marker, and I released the treat so she could have it and receive that payment. Yes. 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 Further on in training, you can still use it. Sit. Yes. Good job. You can tell that we have done a lot of engagement training. She stays with me and stays engaged so intensely. She pretty much burns holes through my faces and out the back of my skull. Good. Good job. Heel. Yes. Good job. Now, how do you use the duration marker? I'll give you a few examples. So say I give her the HEEL command. She's in it, but I want to do one full circle around the room before I give the terminal. I can use the duration marker in movement to help encourage her that she's doing the right thing. Since the duration marker is not a promise, I can choose whether or not I want to pay. Earlier on in training, I will pay very often for the duration marker just to show them that this word has really good value and it will help guide them in the future when I do not present payment as often. Heel. Good. Yes. Yeah, woo! Get it, woohoo! Good job, Chai. And as you can see, we can have a lot of fun with our terminal marker and turn it into a play session. That makes it so much more valuable, and you can see how much fun she has when she receives that terminal. It's going to have a greater effect with that. So let's create a behavior and use our markers while we are starting from the very beginning. So let's say we want Shiloh to walk in between my legs with me as we move. I can lure. Yes. Good. Yes. I know you can't see it, but when I said the duration marker, I did not release. She just continued to follow, and then when I was ready to use the terminal, that's when I released. And I'll do it again for you. Good. Yes. Good job, babe. Another example, let's say we're creating the spin. This is where you want to use successive approximation and put little movements together to create one large movement. Sounds like one dog's having fun with his breakfast bowl. All right, so right here, what I mean by a successive approximation is essentially baby steps. I'm going to lure her in a circle, but not the full circle at first. As we are introducing this command, we'll put it together piece by piece. So that might be a quarter spin, and then a half spin, 3/4 spin, and then a full spin, right? So we lure, yes. Something as small as that can be marked to encourage her to follow that lure in that direction next time. Yes. That time we went an extra quarter rotation all the way to the halfway mark. She did a full 180. This next time we're gonna go 3/4 of the way. Yes. She has practiced the spin here and there, not consistently enough to actually know the command, but enough to where she is more fluent following this lure. This time we'll move from 3/4 all the way to a full 360. Yes. Later on in training, you're not going to be using the lure. You might just be using your hand and a little bit of body language to help them figure it out as we are fading away from needing to use the lure and body language altogether. So, spin. Yes. You see how I did not have a lure to begin with, and I wasn't even putting my hand in front of her face. All I was doing was giving her that little bit of body language that she's so used to seeing through me luring it over and over and over again. So at this point, I can just go, spin, yes. With the ultimate end goal being me standing here, giving her the command and her doing it. I cannot use the command with her because she does not understand it. Spin. She has no idea what that means, so she still requires some help with my body language. She might not require me to be all the way down here in front of her face, but she does require watching my body move in order to complete the command. That's because she has not paired the word with the actual behavior of the command yet. You ready? Spin. Yes. Another example of using duration might be as we lead our dog onto the place bed and into the down. I like to have our dogs go into a down on the place bed so that way we can encourage them to have an off switch later in training and just encourage them to stay calm. So as we are going, place, good. Yes. Good job, baby. So as she was getting on the bed and getting into position, I encouraged her to continue that behavior with the duration marker. And when the behavior was complete, at that exact moment, I marked with the terminal and had her come to me for payment. Good girl. Place. Yes. So a quick recap of the markers. Yes, or a clicker, is going to be your terminal marker letting the dog know that they did in fact complete the behavior exactly how I wanted, come to me to get paid. The terminal marker is a promise, so if you use it, ensure you have food to give them. Duration marker, we use good. This is letting the dog know that they are on the right track, they're conducting the correct behavior, but you're not done. Keep doing what you're doing. This is not a promise, and payment is not required. If you choose to pay, we will come to them for payment. No is simply letting the dog understand that they are not doing it correctly and that either a correction is inbound or food withholding is going to take place. While you're working with your dog, it's important to understand that dogs' brains get mentally stimulated during training. Therefore, they get mentally tired. If you were to sit down and do homework for the first time in a long time, after about a half hour, you're going to be mentally exhausted and just completely drained. But the more you do that every day, homework after homework after homework, your mental endurance gets stronger and stronger and you last longer. Then you can start doing homework longer and longer each session. The same concept works for our dogs. So in the earlier phases of training, we need to make sure we keep our sessions short, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to begin with. This is going to make sure our dogs do not get mentally tired and start checking out on us and losing interest in that training session. We want to end the session before they get satiated or too tired. That way, when they come into the next session, they've been craving it. If they end the session tired and they don't want to participate anymore, they're not going to be as excited for the next session to start. If we end the session before our dogs get too tired or satiated with treats, our dog will look forward to the next training session more and more, improving their efforts and their engagement for that next session. It also helps us end the session with a very strong, positive finish with a successful rep. So that way, when we put our dogs up, they go into that remembering that and thinking about what they did to earn that big payday. We want our dogs to go out of a training session with a positive end to the session and without being satiated or mentally tired. So, when we start, keep your training sessions short, 5 to 10 minutes. As our dog moves further and further through the training program, their mental endurance will increase with it. With that, we can increase the length of our training sessions. Your homework for this training lesson. Every single day, I would like you to do 2 to 3 sessions of training with your dog, 5 to 10 minutes long for each session. Once you're able to test your marker word, yes, and your dog snaps their attention to you, you are good to go and move on to the next lesson.